Welcome to the Chapter 10 Blood Review, or the Blood Review for the HAPS exam. Here are your core concepts / learning objectives. As always, go back and review whatever you might need more in-depth help with. So the 5 functions of blood. All right. Sorry. So they help to reduce blood loss, blood clotting. They help with blood. The blood helps with heating the body, maintaining our thermodynamics. Defends against any type of foreign invasion, helps to maintain blood pressure, and of course, main job of blood, transporting oxygen, nutrients, waste, and chemical messengers throughout the body. So what are the 5 types of blood cells? Well, there's 5 white blood cell types, sorry. There is the red blood cell, the erythrocyte, the 5 white blood cells, the neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil, lymphocyte, monocyte, and then you have the types of proteins that are found in the plasma. The albumin makes about 55% of plasma, fibrinogen, which helps with blood clotting, and then all the globulins and other materials. A cute little acronym, remember this from lab, never let monkeys eat bananas, tells you the 5 different types of white blood cells, but the order, neutrophil, lymphocyte, monocyte, eosinophil, basophil, tells you their prevalence inside the, the plasma. So neutrophils being more common, basophils being the least common. So let's take a look at what is inflammation. All right, so there's the acute and chronic inflammation, parasitic inflammation, and then of course the inflammation that results from an allergic response, where your white blood cells respond to a perceived foreign pathogen. And then take a look at the red blood cells. The fact that red blood cells are anucleate. They have no nucleus, no organelles. Everything has been changed so that they now can get filled with hemoglobin. All right. So we have that. They're biconcave or flattened in the middle, and they're filled with hemoglobin. All right. And then how is the structure and function of hemoglobin? Right there, upper right-hand corner. So this is what we call a quaternary protein. It is made up of many folded layers of proteins, and in the middle of each globin, which is one part of the protein, there's 4 globins together, we have a heme molecule, and in that heme molecule it has the iron. And then down on the bottom right hand side, the life cycle of a red blood cell, starting with the fact that it's produced in red bone marrow. It then becomes an immature red blood cell called a reticulocyte, and then it matures and becomes an erythrocyte, and then enters into the bloodstream where it lives for approximately 120 days. And then at that point it begins to be degraded. The macrophages in the spleen, liver, and bone marrow digest them and then take apart all the components. And you can see the heme portion. It may be recycled, or it may be removed to the liver where it becomes bilirubin, and then bilirubin becomes part of the bile that we then excrete into the small intestine and is removed from the body. The iron will get reused. The globin molecules will get broken down into amino acids that can be used again. So that's all of that, guys. Again, this is so brief, so please go back and review if you have any questions. Possible causes of anemia. Well, there's hemolytic anemia, hemorrhagic anemia, and production failure, and you can see those in the bottom left-hand corner. And then what happens to a person if they happen to move to a higher altitude? How do we increase the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood? And that's the diagram in the middle. So that means that they usually have anemia or a low blood cell count or lack hemoglobin. So what ends up happening is erythropoietin is released by the kidney, which stimulates the red bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. And then that leads to increased red blood cell production, which leads to more red blood cells and corrects for the anemia. And you can see the regulation of platelet synthesis and the problems associated with thrombocytopenia, which is when there's too many. Oops, sorry, that was my answering machine, guys, in the background. I think you might have heard my phone ringing too. Apologies. So use diagrams to explain the 3 steps of homeostasis: the vascular phase, the platelet phase, and the coagulation phase. And then use flowcharts to illustrate the tissue factor pathway, contact activation pathway, and common pathway. Now these figures come from different texts, and therefore I thought they do a better job of explaining it than the figures in our text in a little bit more detail so that you can see the different pathways. So again, as always, feel free to pause this video to take some more time to examine these pathways. I do understand this because these do show up on the HAPS test. And then list the 3 differences between coagulation and thrombosis. So coagulation is the process whereby the blood clots in order to stop the loss of blood from the vessels. So a clot is a gelatinous weave of fibrin at the site of a hemorrhage outside of the blood vessels, whereas thrombosis is abnormal, localized intravascular collection of platelets and blood cells. So clot stops the blood from leaking out of the vessel. A thrombosis is something that develops inside the vessel, and we're not sure why that happens, but it does. No coagulation factors are necessary. It occurs in veins or arteries, typically where the endothelium is damaged or something is happening. And if that thrombosis or the thrombus detaches and begins to travel throughout the body, then becomes an embolus. Sorry, mispronounced that. And so therefore you need to treat the person for those. And then the last concept for this is discussing the blood types, type A, B, AB, and O, the type of antigens found on the red blood cell, the type of antibodies found in their plasma, and who they can donate to and who they can receive from. So make sure you understand that quite well. It's a big, big concept on HAPS. And then the Rh positive and the Rh negative are what we call the anti-D. And that's in the right-hand side. As always, thanks for joining. Best of luck.